guys, I'm Aedlycia, and I have a question for you. What if a new variant of COVID-19 suddenly emerged? What would be the impacts of it, and can it be avoided? If not, how can we reduce the effects of it? Today, I'm going to answer those questions and more with my disaster action plan. Let's check it out. As you might have heard, I predict that there might be a new COVID-19 variant in the future. But first, what is a variant, and which existing variants of COVID-19 should we worry about? Like all viruses, the virus that causes COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2, mutates constantly and will continue to mutate for as long as it circulates. Sometimes these persistent mutations lead to the eventual emergence of a new variant, or strain. In these variants or strains, there will be at least one change to the virus. The CDC, or Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, has classified only 2 strains of COVID-19 as variants of concern. As of now, of course. These 2 variants are Omicron and Delta. Though not variants of concern, the Alpha, Beta, and Gamma variants of SARS-CoV-2 are also strains to be wary of. In summary, variants are caused by mutations, which affect transmissibility, the way in which disease presents itself, and the virus's ability to evade natural or vaccine-induced immunity. While many experts say they wouldn't be surprised if there were new variants of concern in the years to come, it would be difficult to predict the variant's rate of transmission and other factors that are caused by mutations in the SARS-CoV-2 virus. Take Omicron, for example. The variant was able to compete with Delta because of its high transmissibility and ability to evade the immune defenses of both vaccinated and previously infected people, which allowed Omicron to infect other parts of the global population that Delta couldn't readily infect. In order to compete with Omicron, a new variant would have to have higher transmissibility and immune evasiveness. Kartik Chandran, a virologist and professor of microbiology and immunology at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York City, stated that he would expect to see more variants and similar types of wave-like behavior. This suggests that, when the new variant emerges, there will be a surge in infections. And that was my prediction. Every action has its equal opposite reaction, so let's see what the impacts of this situation would be. Number 1. Strain on familial relationships. This branches out in myriad ways, but I've only listed 2 here. The first way in which the emergence of a new SARS-CoV-2 variant would strain familial relationships is by separation. Global restrictions of movement have separated families and limited how often family members are able to stay in touch with each other. University students in other countries can't visit their parents, and neither can working adults in the same country as their parents. But the effects of separation don't stop there. Marriages aren't spared from the consequences of separation either. An example of this would be the marriage of Munira Faisal. While she and her husband had been in a long-distance relationship since 2019, he would still make weekly trips to the capital city to see her and her children. After the MCO, though, he wasn't able to visit them at all, and as days passed, Munira could feel the strain growing on their marriage. He came home to discuss a divorce at the end of 2020, and the divorce was finalized in March 2021. Over 76,000 Malaysian married couples, both Muslim and non-Muslim, filed divorces from March 2020 to August 2021. The second way in which the emergence of a new SARS-CoV-2 variant would strain familial relationships is through domestic violence. It is widely believed that lockdowns and quarantine periods have done more harm than good, and this isn't necessarily wrong. Having your movement restricted for so long, in addition to stress over financial instability, can be detrimental to both mental and emotional health. The effects of this can be seen across the globe, especially when it comes to domestic violence and abuse. Levels of domestic violence have spiked in various nations. In France, for example, there was a 36% increase in domestic violence since the beginning of the global pandemic. In Australia, there was a 75% rise in Google searches for help. According to an advocacy and communications officer at the Women's Aid Organization, or WAO, domestic violence survivors are at greater risk because they are trapped in the house all day with the abuser. It is also more dangerous for them to seek help, as the abuser may be monitoring their every move. On to the next impact, family conflict. With new variants come new vaccines and new booster shots, just as booster shots have been introduced to optimize immunity against variants like Delta and Omicron. There have been several conflicts caused by the very topic of vaccines themselves, even in families. Despite pleas from family members, parents and siblings can refuse to get vaccinated, and simple attempts at persuasion can swiftly escalate into fiery arguments. The final impact that a new COVID-19 variant could have is its impact on the influence of vaccines. You'd think that something as simple as a COVID-19 vaccine can't really have that severe of an effect on your life, but looking at the case of Novak Djokovic might convince you otherwise. At this point, it almost seems as if your vaccination status supersedes your passport. In Djokovic v. Minister for Immigration, Citizenships, Migrant Services, and Multicultural Affairs 2022 FCAFC3, it is stated that Mr. Djokovic was not, by January 2022, vaccinated, which made it plainly open to the minister to infer that Mr. Djokovic had for over a year chosen not to be vaccinated because he was opposed to vaccination or did not wish to be vaccinated. As a result, it was said that Mr. Djokovic's presence in Australia may foster anti-vaccination sentiment, and so his visa was cancelled. This is a clear demonstration of how laws can be used to exclude a person who has previously expressed political views that the government do not agree with. In this case, the person would be the apparently anti-vaccine Djokovic against the pro-vaccine government of Australia. It would seem that Malaysia may be adopting this mindset as well, because many reports state that Malaysian Health Minister Khairy Jamaluddin has made many statements to stubborn anti-vaccine communities, including threats to continue to make life very difficult for you if you are not vaccinated because you choose not to. It's also reported that the Malaysian Ministry of Health, or MOH, will track down those who refuse to be vaccinated against COVID-19, rather than waiting for them to visit vaccination centers themselves. According to CNA, Malaysia is even considering fining people who miss their vaccination appointments, among other possible actions that may be taken against them. Of course, every problem has its solution, or an action plan that'll at least reduce the effects of it. Here are 3 of my action plans. First up, cordon sanitaire. In short, cordon sanitaire is the restriction of movement into or out of a geographical area, often to stop the spread of infectious diseases. This can take the form of lockdowns, stay-at-home orders, and quarantine. How exactly will the implementation of cordon sanitaire measures be effective? Cordon sanitaire measures are crucial to the process of reducing the spread of a disease, but it isn't the most feasible as a long-term solution because of the negative impacts it has on the people and the economy. Cordon sanitaire measures may, however, prove particularly efficacious if implemented and lifted at the right times, with the right severity. Let's take the Malaysian Movement Control Order, or MCO, as an example. The MCO took effect on the 18th of March 2020 and required all businesses to close, except those providing essential products or services. Enforcement of the MCO was tightened over time, and as a result, this led to significant improvement in compliance. The number of new and active cases began to steadily decline from mid-April 2020, which suggested that implementing the MCO was successful in curbing the spread of COVID-19 in Malaysia, in spite of the severe effects it had on the financial situation and mental, social, and emotional health of the Malaysian people. Re-implementing similar measures may work to effectively reduce the spread of a new variant. While there was a spike in cases and a steady increase in the number of deaths, it remained below 100 until the 29th of April 2020. According to the World Health Organization, or WHO, the mortality rate due to COVID-19 in Malaysia, as of the 30th of April 2020, was 1.7%, which was much lower than the global average of 7.1%. Next, insurance, or more specifically, COVID-19 travel insurance. Insurance companies have started to provide comprehensive travel protection, complete with COVID-19 coverage, which allows travel and helps secure a more financially stable future. That's for traveling, though. Insurance in general, however, is also important. I believe most families already have health insurance, but not all insurance companies include COVID-19 coverage in their plans since the disease is relatively new. Because of this, it's better to ensure that they receive COVID-19 coverage in case any members of the family are diagnosed with COVID-19. Last but not least, following basic health measures, like the Standard Operating Procedures, or SOPs. COVID-19 SOPs, similarly to SOPs at a workplace, are a set of instructions intended to help workers and the general public carry out routine operations in an effort to help curb the spread of COVID-19. SOPs have been successful in the past, and implementing similar guidelines may have the same positive effect. The main SOPs for COVID-19 are to wear a face mask properly while in public areas, according to MOH recommendations, keep a physical distance of at least 1 meter, and use hand sanitizer before entering any premises. Now that we've looked at the impacts of and possible solutions to my prediction, how can this crisis be avoided? And can it even be avoided at all? It's quite difficult to avoid a virus without a miracle. COVID-19, like all diseases, is unpredictable. There will be many viruses and potential pandemics to come, and we'll most likely have to live with them, as we do with influenza. With COVID-19 reaching its endemic phase, there's hope that we can return to our lives as they once were, without the virus disrupting our regular interactions. Similar to how influenza is constantly evolving, COVID-19 will continue to evolve, and vaccines may grow to become a more integrated part of our daily lives. We might take a corona shot every year, just like we take flu shots every year. You can't exactly foresee a future pandemic, and mistakes are usually made when you're faced with something you aren't familiar with. For now, we can use what we've learned from dealing with COVID-19 to approach other similar global situations in the future. But this doesn't mean we shouldn't continue to prioritize our health and take the necessary preventive measures, even as the number of COVID-19 cases dwindle as the virus transitions into an endemic. In a personal view by various authors, it is stated that eradicating SARS-CoV-2, as was done with SARS-CoV in 2003, does not seem a realistic goal in the short term. COVID-19 will never truly disappear, and new strains of the virus may develop in the future, but we can still hope to live lives that were almost as normal as they were before the pandemic began. That was a lot. Anyway, what do you think? I really hope we'll actually be able to live our lives as they once were, or almost as much as they once were before the pandemic started. I think that's about it for today. Thanks for watching. Bye!